Hello and welcome back to the Overgrown Manga podcast. This is episode 4 and today we're joined by DiceHead.
Yo, what's up? I'm DiceHead, obviously from my channel, DiceHead. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And today we're going to be doing comics versus manga, talking about which one we'd rather. I'm Innisfreed's Mangoes.
And I am OneGreatMangaWar. What's up, my champs?
So today we're going to be starting off with Dice. So do you want to get into like what you think's better, what you think about them both?
Yeah, so manga versus comics. Something that I just love talking about. That was like, when I heard that as the topic, I was like, yes, because that's my single favorite thing to talk about. One of the main mission statements of my channel is to get those two communities more merged together. As manga, comics, it's all just graphic literature, or I just call them all comics because that's what I was raised on. And I think they could just take a lot from each other. So really excited to comment on a lot of things about these communities. And I think I'll start off with just that. Both of you guys got to get into the other one. I'm assuming based on like what our channels are. I mean, a lot of Manga Wars viewers maybe read comics. Innis, I know you have a couple of videos on comics, or is it just the one or a couple?
I think I have one, but they're mentioned in a few other videos, and I will be making more videos on them because I really enjoy them.
And then, of course, people will be coming here from Ink's channel, that's predominantly a manga channel. So most of the people here will be manga readers. But if you are a comic reader, please give some manga a chance. I mean, I'm sure throughout the duration of this podcast, many amazing recommendations will be mentioned. And also...
Oh, just can I quickly say, talking about Inks, I forgot to mention, sadly Inks can't make it today, but they'll be back next week. Just to let you know.
But, manga fans, get into some comics. I mean, all your favorite YouTubers have made videos on comics. All of them read comics. I can say that for a fact. Every single YouTuber they've talked to they thought was just into anime and manga, every single one of them has told me about some of their favorite comics. So get into some of these,
I started off with comics. I got into comics way before manga, like probably years before manga. And I wasn't like the biggest fan as big a fan I am with manga, but I've recently been getting really into comics. Not as much as manga, but I've got quite a good collection of comics and graphic novels.
Yeah.
I started off early too, was with comic books, and that was with Sonic the Hedgehog, the comic books, and those still have such a huge special place in my heart. And they're actually really good comic books. It's crazy how good they are.
I started off with I was going to the plane somewhere. I don't think this is where Mist and Line up in my first one, but this is what really got me into comics. So we were about to go on the plane, and there was this little shop, and I went in to see what there was there, and there was a Simpsons comic, like a really small one, was 70 pages or something. And I saw, and I was like, I need to get this. And on the plane, I read the whole thing twice, and then I got home and read it again because it was I reread it so many times, and I was considering rereading it again because I just really enjoyed it. It's destroyed. I've read it so much. So then I got quite a few more Simpsons comics. Then I got DC, Marvel, and I've got loads of other comics like that.
My first experience with comics, I mean, it's not a singular comic, but I don't know if you guys know the Justice League animated series.
Yep.
Well, after the Justice League animated series, like the main one, it's the popular one, but there was one called Justice League Unlimited, which was afterwards, and it's so much better. It's the cast of Justice League, the main 7, but they have every other superhero in the DC universe, so this was the best place to start, because I met characters like Question, who's still, I mean, he's not the most indie character, but he's not the most mainstream relevant character. So I got to meet some characters, Booster Gold, just some that would become my favorites. Some that I remember having action figures of that I don't even know the names of today because of how underground some of the characters I had in the show were, and that got me into comics and the whole medium, all those superheroes. My first official comic book was Superior Spider-Man issue 31, I believe.
Oh my word! I love Superior Spider-Man.
Hold up, it's bothering me now if that's the issue number. So
I think Dice is just a way to check which issue it is. But I don't.
Yeah, it's 31.
31. 30. Oh, that's a good thing about comics. You can, with most comic series, you can pick up any volume, and it's not like manga.
Yeah.
It's you can some you
that's
can't.
The misconception of comics, and I see people all the time saying comics need to have one linear storyline so people can get into them easier. But the beauty of the two mediums is that you don't have to read comics linearly. I picked up issue 31 of Spider-Man and enjoyed it so much I still have it in between a bunch of hardcovers. That way it doesn't get bent or destroyed or anything because I want to frame it eventually. But like, you can pick it up at any point. And they're meant to be connected to a degree, but still episodic. You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's something I really like about comic books is like they're meant as like as a book. Like, you pick it up, you can read it immediately without anything worried about it. With manga, it's still like that to a degree, but for me, I feel like it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Like, I can pick up like Ultimate Spider-Man issue like 55, and I know what's going on, right? Like, if I grab like Bleach 72, like, I'm gonna be lost.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the medium, and that's why it can be so creative. Because like, you have a linear storyline, that's great, but like, you can only do so much with that. You have one storyline, like Ichiro Oda in One Piece. I'm sure he would love nothing more than to do an episodic episode on just some random thing that nobody's ever heard of because he's so sick of writing these characters. Maybe not sick of it, but like, you get what I'm saying. He's like, you've been doing this for so long, I'm sure you love nothing more than just take a break, do something a little different for a chapter, but he can't. With comics, you can innovate on it in so many ways. You can have those, like The Invisible is issue 12, which is literally about a character that's not even in the main series, and that issue is just a one-shot where he dies at the end. Like, it's of course crazy.
Well, mega spoilers.
But it can just, like, it can be that very episodic kind of story, and then you can innovate it on more. Like Sandman, which is a great comic series, has issues that are very connected, but they come in 6-issue arcs, and you could read any arc in any order.
Yeah.
So,
Another, I definitely agree. You can also get ones where it's like, you can get, I don't know how to explain it. I've read quite a few comics where, say, it's a Spider-Man comic, and then not specifically Spider-Man, but like, do you know, I need to give a spoiler for WandaVision. There's like another version of Spider-Man will come. Then the next volume he doesn't show up again. He's not mentioned. But do you know what I mean? There's like other versions of the same character that show up.
yes.
Yeah.
I it's like they're not even there in the next volume. I find that really cool. But another thing that got me into comics, one of the main thing was like the Simpson comics, which I don't even know if they're. A lot of people would consider them comics. I'd say they are, but
I didn't even know there were Simpson comics. I've watched 27 seasons of The Simpsons. I'm like a couple seasons behind. I love The Simpsons. So gotta check those out now.
But another one that got me, I don't know how to say it. I think it's like Commandy or something, like The Last Boy on Earth. I like that. That's really good. And I've got like a Commandy and Superman crossover.
Commandy, yeah. Okay.
And I've got like Commandy and Superman crossover. Yeah, I really like it though. And I've got one from I can't remember when it is. It's quite a while ago, and it's a crossover with Superman, and I've read that one a lot. It's like my Simpsons one, except the Simpsons one's more destroyed because before I didn't look after them as well. Like my manga, I look after it really well, and my new comics. But before I just like chucked it in my bag and I'd read it and reread it and reread it.
Yeah. I feel like for me, like comic books, my favorite story of all time is a comic book, and that's All-Star Superman. That whole, nice. I love it so very much. Yes, I know. A tier writer.
Grant Morrison wrote, my favorite comic, and The Invisibles, which I just mentioned before.
Feel like comic books have the ability to be better than manga. Consistently, though. No. I feel like there's a lot more well-known bad comics than there are well-known bad manga.
Yeah.
And I believe that's more due to a lot easier to make a comic book than it is to make a manga, because you have to do a lot more to get your manga out there. Like, you actually have to be good at it. With the comic book, I don't want to say they're picking up random guys off the street to draw their books and stuff, but to a certain degree, there's a lot less of a barrier to get into it, which is good for like new and upcoming people. But like, if you're not good at it, then that's a problem.
I think also a reason for that, which I've always said in my videos, I think the highs of comics are a lot higher than the highs of manga. Like, I think Sandman is much better than Berserk as a story. Even Watchmen, I think, is arguably on par with Berserk, which is honestly kind of considered to be the best manga. But I also think the lows of comics are a lot lower.
I definitely agree with that. But
An interesting point that like comes up there too is the reason we don't know bad manga too is because we're not in Japan. I'm sure in Japan there's a ton of manga that are infamous for being bad. I mean, try and think of like the joke manga that's considered bad. What is like Build King, stuff like that. That's like
Fairy Tale.
a fairy tale, yes.
the manga that we consider to be bad probably aren't even bad for Japan standards. I'm sure they have some that are way worse that we just don't know about, because who's going to bring that to America? Like, it's not going to sell. No company's going to publish that, and no person on the internet's going to read it and make videos or posts about it, you know?
That kind of, I didn't even think about that. That kind of ruined my point. I was going to say, well, actually, no, it doesn't. You know, you were saying the highs in comics are, like, higher than the highs of manga. Or you could say that. The thing is, I definitely agree with you, but I think there's much less of them. It's much harder to get a really great comic than a great manga sometimes. I feel like, I don't know how to explain it, because comics are so much shorter, it's harder to fit, unless it's a graphic novel.
That's personal to you. And what are you specifically like talking about there too? Do you mean like the single issues of comics that can be better than
speed of it?
I'm talking more about like entire comic series that I would consider to be way far and above any manga I've read.
Oh yeah. I just checked by the. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, you go first.
I was just gonna say, whenever I was talking about that Simpsons comic, I just checked, and it was issue 11 of Simpsons comics, and it was just it was random stories. It was like one where it was Krusty's birthday, I'm pretty sure, and everybody disappeared or something. Another one where Simpson became principal or head teacher of a school. It was. I love that comic. The cover's all ripped and about to fall off and stuff.
I mean, I wonder, it's probably pretty cheap online, because Simpsons comics are probably mass-produced considering it was the 90s, so I'm sure you could find a new version of it.
Yeah, I really want one.
But yeah, I think a lot of, like, you mentioned Grant Morrison before, Manga War, and he makes my favorite comic ever, which is Animal Man. I don't know if you've heard about it. I made a video on it a while back.
Yeah, I've watched a video on it.
I've heard about it.
That's by him, and that entire series, mainly his run. I mean, you could put the whole series in that category, honestly, and I think it's still pretty justified. But mainly his run is honestly just like so good. I think it's undeniably better than so many other things, you know.
For like lesser known stuff, because like Animal Man is something that I would say is more lesser known. Is for me, it was like the 2007's run of like Blue Beetle, right when like Brave and the Bold was happening, and he had like was in the show. That version of Blue Beetle is like amazing. It's like
that's definitely in the same vein of Animal Man as far as being like he's like still a superhero, still pretty mainstream, but not like you know the most Booster Gold. He's in that league for sure. Sandman, like I was just talking about, that's pretty well known actually, I would say. I think so at least. But Sandman's like I can't even begin to describe how good it is. I'm working on like technically rereading. I read the series so long ago, I honestly feel like this is a first read of it. But that is like, I'm gonna make a video. I'm gonna try and do it justice. There's some just fantastic videos. There's so much to analyze with it. And it's really just a fantastic story, and I think that, even though maybe because a novel writer wrote it, being Neil Gaiman, who also wrote things like Coraline and American Gods, maybe it's like a little bit of a buff on top of it, but honestly, I still think it's just a fantastic comic book, and I don't think you can really discredit that. Yeah,
that would. I don't know too much about it, but from what I know, it does sound quite good. Have you read Commandy?
I haven't read Commandy. I've heard about him pretty much only in like comic history documentaries and stuff that I've watched, because he's a very early and important hero.
Yeah, I've got quite a lot of the old comics, and I used to love them. I'm probably going to reread them now that we're talking about comics. And my Simpsons comics. Just now I've been reading like this what's it called? It's like a new Superman or something. It's not really.
New Superman. Here, I'll search it up. Does it have a rebirth on the top of it? Is it like that new?
I was just checking what it is. Yes, DC Rebirth New Superman. I just saw it and thought it looked cool, so I've been reading it. Do you know what? It's not that bad. It is pretty new. I can tell.
What DC's doing right now, their titles. I mean, I see nothing but videos on how bad comics are right now. I think DC's doing a really good job with a lot of their
I thought
rebirth titles.
DC got canceled. The whole thing got shut down. Or is that something else?
I think I have not heard about. I feel like that would have gone on my radar.
Right.
You might be right.
Something happened last year with DC, and I don't remember what it was.
AT&T bought them out and was threatening to shut them down. Maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, there we go.
Something with that happened. I know that was a whole thing. Which was like, why would you buy them just to shut them down? I think that's kind of the conclusion they came to as well. But and then I think they settled by having DC open not a graphic novel, a novel line. If you go into a young adult novel section, like a Barnes & Noble or something, you'll actually see like Black Canary novels and stuff like that.
Well, that's interesting.
Which I assume aren't selling too well, but who knows?
Right.
Have you read the Fantastic Four comics? I think they're a million times better than the movies.
I've read many different. I've read the Jonathan Hickman run. I've read a very small part of the Mark Waid run, and I have read a good amount of the original Jack Lee Stan Lee and Jack.
Yeah, I was talking about mainly the Stan Lee one, but I've read some other ones, but mostly the Stan. I've read I think I might have read. I don't know how much of the Stan Lee one I've read, but it's definitely better. It's just
honestly
it's pretty good.
Everybody says the Jonathan Hickman run's the best, and maybe it's definitely the most inventive. It definitely does a ton of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I can't deny that. But there's nothing better than that Jack Kirby. I almost mixed up the names again. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. There's nothing better than that Stan Lee run. That's the pinnacle of Fantastic Four for me.
I would definitely agree. I think it may have been a little bit people overhyped the Stanley. I've forgotten his name now. Not the Stanley one, though. The other one.
Jonathan Hickman.
Yeah, wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't as good as it was said to be. Stanley ones are probably the best.
I think it's very inventive as far as the sci-fi concepts. It introduces things like the Council of the Reeds.
Yeah.
Which is an entire. Do you know Rick and? Well, I'm sure you know Rick and Morty, but the episode where they have the Council of Ricks, where he has a ton of Ricks from alternate universes. That's directly. I don't know if it's ripped out of it, but that's directly in.
Well,
that run.
the whole concept of all of Rick and Morty is just a rip-off. Rick and Morty Morty's a rip-off of Marty from Back to the Future. I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere. It was supposed to be in the first. He was in the first place. It was and Rick's supposed to be Doc whatever Brown or whatever he's called. I love Back to the Future movies. They're great. But I think I heard somewhere that they're supposed to be a rip-off. But actually, I think I'm pretty sure they are.
I think they were a parody at first. And
yeah, that's what I mean. Not a rip-off. Rip-off's the wrong word. Not they weren't purpose stealing their idea. It was supposed to be a joke. That's what I meant. Parody.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
But one thing for me that I like about comic books that it can be seen as a good or a bad thing is character, the story of comic books, you were saying, the different runs. Mm-hmm. They're done by different people and some characters. So oh, you like Spider-Man? Well, how about we give Spider-Man black and white, or Ninja Spider-Man, or Doc Ock Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It definitely opens itself to a wider array of ideas. And there's just some writers who are known for doing some bizarre things. Again, bring up Grant Morrison. He has just done some insane things, brought back insane concepts for his titles. So I think there's so many writers that will just do what nobody else will think of, and that's why you just have some amazing ideas in comics that you won't see anywhere else. Though I agree that I really like that, but just play devil's advocate, I guess. It does take away a lot of the personal touch that a manga has as far as being from a creator.
Mm-hmm.
When you read a manga, you feel like it's coming from their heart. This is their heart and soul.
Which is why I think the recent death of Kentaro Miura is hitting a lot of people harder because of that. That story is extremely personal. So many people have said that that story was him, and honestly, I see what they're saying in that regard. Yeah.
And another thing I'd like to say about comics is, so do you know, it's since they're done by so many different, they can be, there's so many different branches of each story. You could say, somebody could say I like Spider-Man, somebody else could say, and then you could have two people that like Spider-Man, but they like completely different things. So there's some things where it's so different, apart from the characters, there's really different series, but it's obviously still comics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just so different, which I do like because you can just there's the thing that there's so many of it that if you really like Spider-Man, there's so many different things that you can.
I think that's another thing that definitely needs to be addressed. I would want to make a whole video on this because I mentioned it to you guys before we started recording, but one of my videos older on comics and manga, mainly on why manga's outselling comics, has been doing really well recently. And all I see in the comments are people saying, well, the reason for that's because nobody likes superheroes and all comics are superheroes, and that's not true.
Wrong. Yeah.
Well,
So wrong.
I bet you.
Evidence.
If you walked up to anybody in Tesco's and you asked them who Spider-Man was, they'd know. Or unless it's some old granny, she might not know. But Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, they'd all know. But I bet you if you asked them anybody from a manga, except from obviously Naruto, but even most adults and stuff, they wouldn't know that. But anybody, you can ask anybody to name one Marvel superhero or just one superhero, they'd be able to name one. But if you ask them to name a manga or anime character, there's a huge amount of people who wouldn't be able to. So. Yeah. I would say superheroes are popular, but it's more like the format of comics, and I don't know, they're, how they're smaller and
the people who say that it's only superheroes have never actually read a comic. I mean, maybe I don't want to say that, but they've never looked into comics. They've never looked past the surface of what's there.
Yeah.
Look at this conversation we just had. Literally, out of the three of us, both you guys started on a comic that's not. Or very attached to a comic that's not superhero based,
I will say though, maybe not it's all superheroes. It may be oversaturated with superheroes. I think that's
or
of a proper thing.
I'm not sure if that's if I would say maybe more. It's not oversaturated with superheroes, but the ones that have done the best and the biggest companies do superheroes, like Marvel and DC. Their best-selling things are superheroes. So there's loads of non-superhero manga comics out there, but you wouldn't know about them as much. And I'm using the Simpsons one isn't even I don't know if it's a comic. I'd say it is, but it's in the same format. But Dice didn't know about that, and that's not a superhero comic. But I keep saying, but those are it's because superheroes, I think, are such popular, and that's back in the 80s and 90s. I don't know if that's when it was. They were the most popular thing, I think, because Spider-Man, Superman, things like that, Batman, they were the most popular. So now everybody knows about them because they were so popular. Whereas all the slightly bit less big comics that weren't about superheroes might not have done as well. I'm not saying they didn't do great as well as superheroes, but the superheroes ones did the best, and they were done by the biggest companies. So, the people know about them. I keep stuttering.
You're good, and I think Innes brings up a good point with the biggest companies make the same type of stuff, and to a degree that's somewhat similar with manga too. Now that I've been thinking about it, there's the normal teenage kid is just a normal guy until something wacky happens to them, and then you get isekai, or you get he gets he becomes a soul reaper.
I was just thinking Bleach when you were saying that.
It's just weird,
Yeah, especially I feel saying that all comics are superheroes is like saying every manga is shonen.
Yeah.
Tell me you haven't looked into comics, and that's I'll give you at least 20 or 30 that are non-superhero, because even Image Comics, which is a comic company known for such series as Invincible and so much more, has they had to do a whole initiative in the early 2000s to get more superhero comics onto their into their roster and stuff like that.
I'm guessing that's how they got Invincible then.
That is how they got Invincible, because Robert Kirkman, who was the creator of Walking Dead, is actually the same author of Invincible.
And Invincible's so great.
Yep.
Well, so do you want to now go into manga and the things we like about manga and stuff and the stereotypes of manga? Then we can go into comparing them both and see which is the best.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, Dice, do you want to start off then?
Sure. So, I guess my favorite, I mentioned it before slightly, my favorite part about manga is the personal touch that comes with it. There's there's just something different about reading, especially, I mean, One Piece is probably kind of a bad example because there's so much of it. How can you not have like that personal touch?
Yeah.
But definitely you feel it on so many more manga than you do comics. Especially comics as of late. Sometimes I'm reading like a newer Rebirth title, maybe. Like you said, DC Rebirth before, and it almost feels factory. Especially some of the stuff Marvel's doing. It almost just feels like a factory made.
Corporate.
Yeah,
Some of it does, yeah.
And I know that's like because of 100,000 different initiatives that Marvel has going on, and all the like. There's a ton that goes into why that is, besides just the fact that it's not made by one person. But you know, there's it says something, I think.
But I know we're talking about manga now, but just quickly going back to comics, I feel like they've become less personal. There's less personal, like there's less of style with it. It's so perfected and it's just so clean.
Yes, and that's because of the art too, like you said, style. Going back to the 90s, which is like everybody's favorite era of comics.
Yeah.
Everybody's least favorite era of comics. Everybody loves to hate on it. Like,
well, I quite like.
I was gonna say I really enjoyed the 90s.
Oh, I love the 90s too. One of the reasons is what you guys just said, like that style. You can feel every artist has their own unique touch to the 90s flair, and it just feels so inventive.
Yeah.
Comics were coming out like all the time, and with the 90s, you got a lot of really weird ideas, and some sticked and some didn't. And for me, that was just really cool, like reading that.
Yeah.
And just seeing it happen.
But see, when they have such a unique art style or writing style, like today I was reading a manhwa, I think it is, and it's like, I got it in a shop. I just saw it and I thought it looked cool, and I really like it. It felt so personal, and I really felt like I knew the guy that did this. I felt like I could just see him sitting there drawing it. I felt like it was in front of it, just because it was so unique. I don't know what when I was reading it, I could just like I don't know what I could just I don't know what the word is. I don't know how to describe it, but it just felt so. Yeah, it felt so unique and interesting, and I felt like I could just really well. I could just imagine him sitting there writing that because it was just so personal, and which is I think is good about both of them, because you don't get it as much with comics now, as we were saying, because the art style. But it was so different. It didn't have the best art or the best storyline, but that's what made it good, I think. And
I'm guessing, was the manhwa on Webtoon?
Oh no, it was a physical. I found it somewhere, and
oh wow, that's strange.
And it was
I didn't know there were solo leveling.
No, it's something called. Wow. I think it's a manhwa. Somebody told me it was a manhwa, and it's read the same way as an English book, or an English comic, really. And I really enjoyed it. Not as I was saying, it didn't have the best story, but I just felt like I had a connection with the author. And it did have a good story though. It wasn't the best. So I went to see if there was a volume 2, and they never made it. It was on a huge cliffhanger, and I was so annoyed. They never made volume 2, and it's from like 2007. But it was a big cliffhanger.
War Angels.
Yeah, search up on AniList and you'll see it.
And I think that's one of the biggest points about like why webtoons are doing so well too. Is that they are very personal. And like, if you keep with my channel, you might know I'm starting my own, and that's definitely something that like, as I'm making, that's one of the hardest parts, is deciding on the personal touch and the tone of it. Because like, sometimes I would of course want to write something really good. I want to write something on the level of what I would read. That's everybody's goal. But I also want some chapters to feel like those bad episodes of Star Trek that'll come on when it's like 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to be very unique and personal to me.
Yeah, because if it's all perfect like comics, like the latest comics, it kind of will feel like it's from a factory. But see if you have those little moments that you can tell, the creator enjoyed this bit, but it's not great, or you can tell that they put time into this a bit, and it's not perfect. Just because, so I don't enjoy the whole thing. Like with War Angels, I didn't enjoy the whole thing, but it had its really good moments, and it had some moments that weren't great. But you can appreciate those moments because it's not been absolutely.
You go.
No. Sorry, I was pretty much finished.
It's like that place with 90s comics where we were discussing before, where even some of those bits, I mean, like, they couldn't draw feet back then, that's obvious. Some of their faces look funny, but you could just tell that they either enjoyed doing it or that was just their personal touch to it, so you didn't, like, that almost, it gave more charm, you know?
Yeah, because it's not been perfected.
The 90s was very creator driven. That's why I like it so much.
But
Especially some image titles like Savage Dragon, Spawn.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of drawn to old manga. Do you know, like 2000s manga drawn?
Yes.
Like, do you know where it's like that really old style where everybody kind of had like their own touch, but now it's not really bad with manga, but now it's kind of been perfected so much, and there's not their little their own little bit. You know, maybe they can't draw the hands well, things like that. And like Dice was saying, the feet, which it doesn't annoy me. It makes you feel like it's like you can, how do you explain? Well, if you want, I really want to do something like that. I'm not good enough at drawing. I'm not great at drawing at all. But it makes you feel like if they're not perfect, then maybe it gives you could do it as well, because they obviously still have things to improve on. So
that's some of my favorite parts of older manga that I'll read too. Like Osamu Tezuka is my favorite manga. He's super old, like 50s to 80s, or every title I've read by him, and like that, you can see the roots of it. You can see the imperfections forming, and like I feel like I could tell you this guy's life story because of how every manga fits into where he was when he drew it. Like it's so personal, you know.
Yeah.
And that's something I can definitely say something similar was like for stuff that feels very like perfected to the point where it doesn't feel like there's a personal touch. I've been feeling that a lot with like more recent like shonen anime. So for stuff like Jujutsu Kaisen and like My Hero Academia, I have a really hard time like watching them. Not the fact that they're both great. It's just it feels so perfected that it doesn't feel personal.
Yeah.
It just feels like a robot made it.
That's how My Hero Academia felt for me. That's how even the latest chapters of Berserk, because Intamir switched to digital and some of the later arcs. Looking at the art, it feels too perfect, you know.
I know what you mean. And it's like with as we were saying, with comics looking like they've been done in a factory. I can't, when I'm reading the new comics, I can't imagine somebody sitting there drawing that, even if it is digitally. I can't imagine that, because this just looks really, there's no problems with them at all. They're done so well, and there's just obviously since it's done digitally, no imperfections, and the coloring's perfect, no fading or anything. There's just no problems with it at all. So I can't imagine somebody sitting drawing that, because it's like they've literally been just handed a panel by panel script, and they have to follow that. I'm not saying they do, but it just kind of feels like that to me. Whereas with old comics, you can just I can imagine somebody had sat there and drawn that, and I'm not saying each one. Obviously, they drew a couple drafts, then it was printed.
It definitely is like a different feeling to it. There's some newer manga that have that personality to them. I mean, it could just be art style too. I feel like My Hero Academia, Black Clover, even Demon Slayer to an extent, they all kind of meld together in my head as far as art style goes. I know you could look at them and point out tiny little differences, but I feel like they all kind of had that same feel to them as far as the art goes.
But
that's something that I like over manga, but overall, I couldn't say I prefer manga over comic books, because, like I said, if comic books are at their highest, like I'm holding the comic book, I'm shaking, and I'm like in tears, right? But like, I don't get that, that's my high of comic books, right? But like the high of manga is like lower than that, which is One Piece. I may be crying or whatever, but like I'm not like thinking this is like the second coming of Christ, right? Comic books give me that feeling, and I think that's partially due to the fact of comic books are made for a Western audience, and it is done more for like the Western ideology, which is something I'm not like a big fan of like how Western society pulls itself, but oftentimes comic books can like sway it in a way to make it like really beautiful. It gets me really moving. So it pains me to say it, but like I think I prefer comic books over manga.
I personally switch back and forth a lot. I have this weird thing that happens where every summer I tend to read more comics than I do manga. It's just like kind of,
Same way.
it just sort
Yeah.
of happens. I don't know why. It's almost like it's on a schedule. Like every May, it just switches like that. But that aside, I mean, right now, of course, I prefer comics because of that reason. I've been reading a lot more comics. Sandman, I've been reading, like I said. I finished up Animal Man. I've been reading a lot of Batman. I reread Watchmen, reread V for Vendetta, stuff like that. So, of course, right now I'm going to prefer that. But on average, over the time, I have preferred comics. And manga only really... I feel like there were certain points that I can tell you when I preferred manga, and those were things like when I was reading Bakuman, when I was reading One Piece. Like, my favorite series are kind of the only points that I've really preferred manga. So I don't discredit manga. I think they have a lot of highs, and I think they have some really high highs as far as like exceeding some of my favorite series. But I still don't think they got anything on a really good comic.
Yeah. Dice, do you know how you were mentioning what's it called, Black Clover? Do you have Volume 1 anywhere near you?
I do not. I sold it.
Well, I was going to say, so it's like, see it's on one of the first pages, and it doesn't look drawn, and this happens like this is in some of the first pages of quite a few manga. It's like it looks I don't know what the word is, but it doesn't look like it's been drawn. It looks like do you notice there's like no what's the word?
No line work?
Yeah, it looks like just a picture.
Oh, okay. I think I know. So that's because those are color pages. When they scan onto black and white, it often doesn't look as well as like it does when it's actual color pages. If you were to hold like an actual Shonen Jump volume, it looks very good. I used to think that, and then I got the Shonen Jump volume and cross compared with the chapter One Piece, and I was like, oh, that's why this looks so weird in the book. So yeah, I definitely noticed that. It off puts me too. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like
That's something I will say that's actually better with manga, is oftentimes manga's a lot cheaper than comic books.
Yes, for sure.
That's it. That's all I want to say. You
Yeah.
can go ahead and just...
There's some places. I was trying to buy this volume of Commanding. The guy was he was selling it for like, I can't remember, but close to the price of a volume of manga. And I was like, this isn't. I know this. I didn't say it to him, but I was just thinking this is like much thinner. It's not got as much story, but
Yeah.
it's. I don't know if really it's worth the same price as a manga. I would.
What are you saying?
I was just so. I think comics are sometimes overpriced.
I think that the reason for that is because comics, especially after the 90s, where everything kind of crashed because of this, they're a commodity. They're not actually like a manga. A book of manga is just meant to be read, and honestly, in Japan, a Shonen Jump magazine is meant to be thrown out. Like they're just meant to be read. In America, though, comics are seen as a commodity. They're a collectible in the end. So that's why you get a lot of I guess, overpriced, things like that. Even trade paperbacks that should just be made to be read, they're still seen as collectibles.
Yeah, I've only got 3 of the Shonen Jump magazines, although 2 of them were very kindly sent to me by my name's Doofy, they're really cool. I love them. I just think it's so well, I don't know what the word is, but it's so cool. I just said cool. I'm using it again. And having a manga in A4, and there's some coloured pages in it, and all the adverts. I really like the old adverts for like old games and stuff. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see from an outsider perspective.
For me, comic books, like, where my price is like, I can't go any further than that. Like, it feels like the money's worth it. For me, it's like $3. I think it's like £2 for you. It is.
Well, yeah. I recently just bought. There was this comic I wanted. And it was like, how much was it? I've still got the tag on the little bag it came in. It was £3.50. So I don't know how much that would be in dollars, but I think it was a little bit overpriced.
$5.
Yeah, I think that's around $5. That's what a lot of them are right now, actually.
But this was, yeah. I just think it could be sold for less. I mean, $5 it's not bad.
I think they're actually more expensive right now because of obviously COVID, pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that's actually because I know that hurt the industry a lot. So I know like last year I bought some for like $4, so I know they're up to 5 right now. I was at a shop recently, so like that would be the most plausible explanation, I guess I'd say.
I was speaking to the guy at my local comic shop, which I go to a lot, and he also sells manga. And I was looking at something, Uzumaki. I bought it, and then I can't remember what I got it for, but it went up like £5 or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous. But I didn't say. I said to him, and this wasn't the only thing that went up. I said, why is it going up? And he told me that manga's going up. I don't know if this is true, but for him to buy, apparently it's getting more expensive. So he says the price of manga's going up, which I don't know if that's actually true, but no. With some things it has. I saw some things on Amazon that I was going to buy, and they just went right up in price, and they weren't on sale or anything.
Yeah, because it's mainly just because of comic shops like hurting right now, because they were hurting before. You can only imagine now after everything that's gone on. Yeah,
comics are like kind of dying.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't think there's ever going to be a boom in comics again. I think it's going to keep going down. There'll always be that small audience, but I don't think it's ever going to become what it was, or even what it is just now. I think in 20 years, comics will be like a very, very small thing.
So like, here's the thing: the comic market is actually up right now because so many people will go into their shop to get manga, because manga is obviously huge right now. Manga's beating real books right now. Yeah, it's blowing up. So people will go into their shop, see, a manga, and then see this Batman comic right next to it and go, oh, I remember liking this movie, or liking, this TikTok I saw on this comic, stuff like that. So it is actually getting people more and more into it. So the market is going up right now. So that might result in something long term, hopefully. I mean, obviously it's in America. I know you're over across the pond, so things are a little different for you.
Yeah, but I don't think the hype for manga is going to last forever either. And I'm not saying manga is going to go down like comics did, which I still like comics.
I guess that's like the logical thing, though, right? Because the comic book crash of the '90s happened. Manga are experiencing a similar boom. The
'90s crash happened because people thought they were worth something. I don't think people are buying manga because they're worth something. I think they're buying
the point is everything crashes eventually. Is kind of what I'm getting at. So
just think about manga's kind of become like a kind of craze, but more of a long-term craze, and they all end up dying in the end. But there's always like a group of people that still that don't stop with manga, so it keeps the industry going, but maybe not as much as it was before. Like there's still comic shops are still around. Like most of the shops that sell manga near me are mainly comic shops, and they do sell quite a bit of comics. I can see that, and so there will always still be that people that have always liked comics, and probably will forever. So if manga ever does go down, there will still be groups of people. There'll still be manga YouTubers. There'll still be manga collectors. But the big hype and craze might go down.
It's definitely in a craze right now. I've had people who've never heard of this stuff before ask me about it, like recently, stuff like that. So it's for sure on the up and up.
Yeah.
What about you, Ennis? Which one do you prefer?
Comics or
manga?
It probably just depends on what I'm reading at the time. See, if I'm reading a comic and you asked me, I'd probably say comics. When I'm reading manga, I'd probably say manga. Not gonna lie. Maybe it would change depending on what I'm reading. See, if I'm reading a really bad comic, I might say manga, and same with manga. But I would overall, I couldn't tell you actually. It just depends on what I'm reading, most likely.
I think like it's even.
Pretty much. Maybe slightly more on the. No, actually, I couldn't say. I think it's probably 50-50. I think it's harder since there's so many comics, and nowadays it's harder to find good new comics, I think, than good new manga. Like there's a huge majority of the old comics are good, in my opinion. I've read quite a lot of the old ones, but when it comes to the new ones, I think it's much harder to find a good comic. Would you agree, Dice?
Yeah, especially newer, like you said.
Yeah, but with manga, I'm not saying it's not difficult it's just really easy to find a good series. But I do feel it is kind of difficult to. No, it's much easier to find a really good manga series than a really good comic series nowadays. If you're buying brand new rather than like old comics. Which I feel like there's less like really enthusiastic comic writers. Like before, there was loads of people, all the comics you could tell it was really people really wanted to make, but now there's a lot you can tell people really enjoyed making it, but then there's also a lot I feel you can tell they've done it exactly as they were told to, or kind of, so it's just so perfected and really just to get paid in some of them, I think, but that's not as often, not too many, but more than there was a long time ago. My opinion.
So we have Dice says comic books, I say comic books, and Innes says a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Should we start wrapping things up then?
Yeah, if Dice, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay, well, I'll just wrap it up then. Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you for watching this episode. We really hope you enjoyed. Thank you for coming, Dice.
Thank you for having me.
No, it was really fun. If you enjoyed, then like and subscribe if you want. I don't know why I don't really usually say that. I don't know why I said that anyway. We will have another episode out next Thursday because episodes come out on Thursdays, and tell us in the comments which one you rather, manga or comics, or tell us if you just haven't read one of them. But I definitely recommend, if you haven't read manga, read manga, and if you haven't read comics, read comics. Okay, so I guess we should all just say bye. Bye.
Bye.